Hey there, welcome back to my garden. So we just finished doing school. I homeschool my boys and we just finished up, so it's later in the afternoon. I came outside thinking, what am I going to work on today? And I realized it was actually quite warm, being as it is later in the day. Also, the lighting is kind of cruddy, it's up high, so I thought working on the back patio right now would be perfect. It's nice and shaded, and I have some stuff to work on back here. I really want to clean up this space, but I also want to work on the containers that are behind me. I mostly want to clean up this area because my mom is coming this weekend, and I thought it would be really nice to be able to spend some time back here on the back patio playing games and, maybe having a little fire in our solo stove thing. And so I just wanted to get the area cleaned up. So let me show you what we are going to be working on. So my intention initially was to actually plant up this hanging basket up here. I did have broalia in it and it was absolutely gorgeous for most of the season, and then I just kind of started not watering it and neglecting it, and it dried out and now it looks terrible. So I was going to replant it. I had gotten some plants to put in it that I thought would absolutely be beautiful, but then I realized that I really actually don't really want a hanging basket there. We typically have underneath it our barbecue. And so when I would water it, even though I do have some plastic lining the inside of the cocoa liner, it would still drip, and it would drip all over the barbecue, and it just really wasn't ideal. So I decided with some of the plants that I got, I'm gonna fix up this container. You can see there's the black container right there. There's a couple on the ground around it. Those I'm just going to actually leave. This one is a cotoneaster, which has really put on a lot of growth and is still really looking pretty. And then there is a kind of scraggly looking rosemary, but I use this rosemary all the time. Several of our favorite dishes use fresh rosemary, and so I like to keep that one there. But this container, we planted this up together last year, and it's looking a little weary. The wire vine is absolutely gorgeous, so I'm going to be trying to work around that, keeping that in there. But I'm going to take out these two heuchera. They're starting to kind of lift out of the container, and when a heuchera does this, I generally just cut it back hard and then I kind of replant it. I just replant it down a little bit deeper to get this portion into the ground. So I'm going to dig both of these out, and I have a place in the garden that I think I'm going to go ahead and plug them in, and I think that they'll be happier once they're in the ground. But this spot right here is right next to our back door. So I look out here and I see this, and as I've said before, that's important to me. What I see from inside the house, I want it to be looking pretty. So there's also a rosemary in here that's looking kind of scraggly. I could probably cut that back and plant it out in the landscape. This Dusty Miller, I'll dig it out, but I think I'll just cut it back and still use it as an element in the planter because I do want that light colored, element in the planter. So for the most part, I'm going to be just digging everything out except for the wire vine, putting the heuchera and possibly the rosemary somewhere else in the garden. I'm going to dig out the Dusty Miller, but I will be reusing that in the container. And then here's what I'm going to be using as I plant up the new planting. So like I said, these I did purchase all of these intending on putting them, well, except for the lemon cypress there, but I did get these all intending on putting in that hanging basket. And I think it would have looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But when I think about it, why would I want to have it up high and hard to see when I could put it into this container and make a beautiful little garden, perfect little vista from inside our house, looking out our back patio windows. I just think that would be a much better option to do. So I do have 3 of each of these. This is actually a trailing heuchera, possibly a heucherella. Let me see if I can find a tag. Actually, I was wrong. It's a tiarella. So Happy Trails Foam Flower Tiarella. It says, well, as you can read that, it says it's a great ground cover or hanging baskets, shade or PM shade. So as you can see, let me hold this up so you can see how it's trailing. But isn't that pretty? Especially because the stems of the tiarella are basically the same color as this grape soda heuchera. So when I saw these together in the garden center, I thought that they would be an absolutely beautiful pair in a hanging basket, and in this case now just in a regular container. And then I did also pick up a sedum for kind of a taller element that was going to be in the center of the hanging basket. This is the sedum, let's see which variety, sedum Autumn Fire. You can see that. Evidently, this is an improved version of Autumn Joy. It's supposed to stay a little bit more compact and not flop as easily, I guess, as Autumn Joy. So that will be in the container. And then I also picked up some variegated vinca, and this will potentially bloom, but for the most part, I got it for the evergreen foliage. I just love that little hint of variegation on the edges, bringing in that creamy white color. I just think that would be really pretty put together with the heuchera, and then obviously the bold color of the heuchera. So then I have 2 of these lemon cypress in just these, they're kind of small containers, and I just know the fate of these. If I leave them in the containers, I'll eventually stop watering them. Anyway, so I have one still in a container. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one quite yet, but this one I'm going to use as the kind of the back tall element in this container. So that's what we're going to be planting in there. I just have over here my kneeling pad. I have some potting soil, my little shovel to be digging everything out. And I think it'll just make such a difference cleaning up this container. I also think I'm going to go through and take out any of the brown leaves on this evergreen clematis. This is the Clematis armandii. I think that would really help. And then I'm also just going to kind of go around the patio, do a little bit of weeding. I'm going to be using this tool. It's a Felco. I don't recall the name of the actual tool, but I got it off of gardenanswer.com, and it's amazing for weeding within cracks. It just digs the weeds right out, and it just works really, really effectively. So I will be doing that. Also just kind of cleaning off the patio table and putting the barbecue back and stuff like that. I can't do totally too much because my husband's motorcycle is right here, so that will still be here, but the things I can improve on, I think I'm going to today. So I think this will be a very satisfying project. I think it'll look much better once I get it cleaned up. There's all sorts of things that the dogs have brought onto the patio, sticks and pine cones and rocks and all that stuff. So get all that cleaned up, and that combined with the pot improvement, I think it's going to be really super pretty back here after I'm done. So let's get started. Lots of aphids on here. right, so here's where we're at. I'll stand back and see this little lemon cypress. Looks a little bit crooked, but this is where we are at with this container. I think it looks really, really sweet. I'm really glad that I was able to keep the wire vine in there. It's doing really, really well. It looks super, super healthy. It was a little spindly up on top, so I just kind of pulled some of the trailing tiarella over and made sure that the leaves of this heuchera kind of came over the top of it where it was looking a little bit sparse, I guess. And then over on the side, I only put in one of the vinca, and then one of the other tiarellas over here. These ones like shade, so this area over here gets primarily shade. Doesn't really get any light at all. So I think these will be happy on this side. And then, as I said, the lemon cypress in the middle, the heuchera in the middle, and then I put the sedum over here on this side on the left because it does like to have a little bit more sun than the other things in this container. So then down here, because this is, like I said, this is a trailing plant, but it's also a ground cover, this Happy Trails vine, this tiarella. I also brought it up here and kind of tucked it in underneath where the sedum is, just because I didn't really have room in this area of the container to actually plant something else. So it looked a little open. It had a little bit of, soil showing, kind of you could see the underside of the sedum. So I just pulled one of the strands up and tucked it in there, and I think it'll probably root in there and continue to grow and fill in and maybe even spill over the side back there. So did also keep the Dusty Miller. I don't know what it is about Dusty Miller. I just love the texture. I love the color. I love just the brightness that it adds to a container. Just that contrast with the green I think looks really pretty. So yeah, that was one that we dug out of the original container and just tucked it right back in there. Easy to work with. Dusty Miller, they do not require a lot. So kind of just pulled out the other containers down here. This cotoneaster right here had a lot of aphids on the back. So I cut off the ones that had the worst activity on it. And then I did bring up some neem oil and gave it a good spray, and hopefully that will rectify the situation. It didn't look like it had spread to anything else over here, so that's good. But before I bring it back over here to be next to these nice new fresh plants, I wanted to make sure I got that sprayed. So then brought out the rosemary. I did prune off some of the stuff on the back of that because it did have some pieces that were dead on the back side. So, but like I said, I love having this one right here on our back patio so that I can cut into that for some of our most favorite dishes. So I think because I have several plants left, I think I'm just going to go ahead and tackle this one as well. I cleaned up some of the dead leaves on the evergreen clematis, and I think what I'm going to do is just dig all of these out. I think because the calibrachoa is still looking pretty good, I might even try to just plop it into maybe the container that's right over there and see if I can salvage it. But because I still have several plants left over there, I thought they would all look really nice planted up underneath the evergreen clematis. And then obviously they will tie perfectly into the container that's next door to them because it'll be a lot of the same plants. And since we're going into winter, fall and winter, this area, it does get a little bit of sun, but not too much at all. It's very early morning sun, and then the sun goes over our house and it doesn't shine on this area at all. So even though this is facing the outside of the patio, I think it'll be okay for these primarily shade-loving plants. So I'm just going to go ahead and empty this one out of everything except for the clematis, and we'll get those plants over there put into this one. that planting came together very sweetly. I just can't believe that I came home with these plants intending for them just to be in one hanging basket. And here I have two very full, very sweet, long-lasting containers that will honestly go through winter for me here in Zone 8B, because the heuchera and the tiarella, I believe the tiarella, but I know the heuchera, but possibly the tiarella as well. Of course, the violas and the vinca, and then obviously the evergreen clematis. Those are all evergreen and they will last through the winter. So hopefully the tiarella will as well. But I just love this idea too, to just weave the ground cover tiarella, which is, like I said, it's a trailing one, so it can be a ground cover, which I imagine it means it'll root in, as well as the vinca, just kind of bringing them through the center of this container, because the root ball of the evergreen clematis is quite large, so I can't actually, obviously plant things too closely to the bottom of it. But if evergreen clematis is anything like regular clematis, it prefers to have its roots shaded. So hopefully by kind of veering the trailing stems of the tiarella toward the trunk of the clematis vine, it'll cover up the roots and hopefully it'll benefit from that. Hopefully that'll help it be shaded and that it'll appreciate the little bit of protection, I don't know, from the winter elements and all that. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. I think that it looks very, very sweet. And of course I do enjoy the addition of the sweet little violas, but just look at all the colors, how they're all communicating with each other so well. The purples in here and then the brightness on the center of those coordinating well with the brightness of the newer growth on the tiarellas. And then of course the variegation in the tiarella going so well with the heuchera. I just love when containers come together like this. I did tuck the vincas kind of in the back. Those don't mind having a little bit more shade. So those are just tucked in towards the back and on the sides and will hopefully make their way through the back of the container, but then also, of course, trailing out. This whole bed used to have vinca in it, and I've slowly been successful at eradicating it, but putting it in containers, I think that's really sweet. And then down here, I actually remembered that I have another foam flower. So this is another tiarella, and it bloomed and bloomed and bloomed beautifully earlier this year. It's just in a little container. I have it in a container mostly to protect this area from the dogs trampling through. They would just veer through here, and that I think is why this hydrangea wasn't doing well, and oftentimes this hosta gets quite tattered. There's even another hosta underneath there, but having a container here in the bed actually prevents them from stepping into it. They may jump over it, which is fine, as long as they don't put their paws down into it. But anyways, so these two containers are done. I did not end up putting the calibrachoa into a container because it did have aphids, which is also why I took out a lot of the soil out of this container and used some other soil to fill in around the plants. If there's been insect activity in a container, I'd like to take out at least a good several inches off of the top to try to not continue on with that issue. So now I'm going to scroll back here, show you kind of the mess that we're dealing with. I'm going to get going on putting all of this stuff back, cleaning up this area so that I can bring the containers back in, and then I'm going to get to weeding between the pavers, cleaning off the table, and just finishing up getting the back patio nice and tidied up as best as I can. am all done. Everything is cleaned up, cleaned down, washed down, picked up, all the things, and the whole space feels so much better, from the plantings to the weeding to blowing off everything, cleaning off the grill, the table, everything. It's just like, it feels like a good way to start fall, and definitely makes me want to spend more time back here. All right, so obviously we started out with the plantings and they're all watered in, and you guys know I'm obviously loving this color combination. Anything with this kind of pinky, purpley color I just think is absolutely gorgeous. I'm loving it for fall. I love it all the time, but especially for fall. I've used them all over the place. I don't even know how many of these grape soda little heucheras I've purchased at this point, but you know, it just keeps everything very continuous, everything cohesive from one planting to another, and I love that. That's, I think, really helpful when you have kind of a large expanse of gardens, just to help tie things together, and I just love that. I'm really excited to see what this Happy Trails tiarella does. I think it's really sweet, really pretty. Got everything watered in. It's all looking good and all weeded out here. Like I said, the table, got that cleaned off. Yeah, the containers over here where I have all these super petunias, they're kind of fading a little bit. Still looking okay from far away, but I could definitely tell as I was cleaning and working around them that it may almost be time to be pulling those out. But just as I scan around, he even got the container hanging basket up there taken down, thankfully. So yeah, it is just looking a ton better back here. It makes me really, really happy, and makes me not be able to even wait to be able to play games on this back table. So thank you guys for hanging out with me while I did this project. I'm really glad to have it done. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed seeing these containers get kind of spiffed up and looking a lot better for the winter months. And I'm glad to have made the decision to put all those plants in the containers rather than the hanging basket. I feel like that's going to be a lot easier to take care of, and I will get a lot more longevity out of the plants for sure. So thank you guys for hanging out with me during this project. I hope you're doing well, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.